Hello.
Aloha. Happy New Year.
Happy World Introverts Day. If you didn't know that that's what today is.
That's helpful.
Yeah. If you,
It's World Introverts Day.
yeah, apparently it's like you've survived the holidays and now is your time to rejoice in solitude.
Good to know.
As an introvert, how do we express our joy?
Very quietly.
With a serene smile
Yeah,
and
that,
a deep contentment that we get to abide in.
that sounds very familiar and soothing. I want to just stay inside for all of 2022.
Safer that way.
Someone just said to me, they can't wait for this year to get over.
Take your time to look at each other if you feel like it. In the next, just connecting with your eyes, face.
Beautiful beings from everywhere. Big Island, Maui, Honolulu, British Columbia. Kyoto.
Looks dark in a few places.
Nighttime, morning time, afternoon, winter. Oh, don't forget to breathe, take a deep breath. Be at ease.
So we'll shift now into a little bit of guided meditation as we feel that ease, as Steve says, that shifting into ease in the World Introvert Day, that sense of, we'll shift now to our moment to moment sixth sense door awareness. And as a kind of jumping off place into this practice, we'll just take a little time with each sense door. So we'll start with hearing. And sometimes it's interesting to start with the knowing we're hearing. Sometimes that can bring in a kind of, the attention kind of pulls back a little bit. It's subtle. It tweaks back a little back into just knowing. Hearing is happening right now. And there's more of a sense in this that as we start to pay attention to the sounds coming and going by themselves, the silence, the sounds. Sometimes from beginning with the knowing, the mind, the sense door of the mind, there's a way in which we can listen to the silence, the sounds, like listening to music and letting the attention go wherever it's naturally drawn with the sounds. Just letting that happen. And within that process, it's helpful sometimes to notice if we're connecting our attention right with the sound as it's happening. And checking to see if the attention is naming the sounds like bird or silence or car. So those are thoughts, a sense store of the mind appearing, disappearing. And then just notice if you can receive the textures and vibrations of the sounds as they're happening. Including the spaces in between, the textures of the silence. Sometimes you can make a soft mental note of hearing once in a while, or not. Sometimes it helps us to just very gently and kindly, with a lot of kindness, just coming back to the hearing. That we can do this with the seeing, the eyes, knowing we're seeing, even though our eyes are closed. There's textures, vibrations happening. And they're changing. And sometimes with our eyes closed, we might get a sense that there's a kind of tightening behind the eyes, trying too hard. Again, letting the attention kind of settle back. With smelling and tasting, it's just that reminder that we're smelling all the time. We might not be aware of it. But just receiving any textures, vibration in that area of the nose. In the mouth, the tasting. Sometimes it's very neutral. Could be pleasant, unpleasant. Just noticing if we are aware of these changing sensations at our sense stores. And when we shift to our whole body, sometimes it's helpful to get a sense of our body posture, the space around our body posture. And similarly to when we were aware of hearing, Just knowing body sensations are happening, textures, vibrations. And just like when we listen to music, letting the attention go to where it's naturally drawn anywhere in the body. It could be more like a symphony. It could be that we're naturally drawn to a smaller area and notice the difference between the word hand or breath or face. Those words might appear in the mind, or we notice them come and go. And very kindly, with so much kindness, coming back to the direct experience, receiving that moment to moment change. Where it can be very interesting to just bring in that little bit of noticing. We often think of it as my hand or my face, my body. Versus changing temperatures like a weather map, warm, cool, hot, cold. Or the earth, our bones, soft, textures, rough, smooth, hard. And the wind, movement, tingling, vibration. We might notice our attention can be very connected to wind with the movement of the breath. Just receiving the beginning of this movement right with its life, right through to its end. Not mine, not ours. Maybe there's some calm, ease, from connecting with that movement. Receiving its life and death. And hands. At times it's helpful to just land with our direct experience, the changing sensations there. the mind or happiness, sadness, anger, joy, compassion, fear, thoughts, mental patterns, just like sounds, just like body sensations. Come and go like the wind. Not me, not I, not mine. It's another sense door. And dropping into the flow of moment to moment experience at your sense doors at times. And when you feel drawn into or pulled into or need to anchor with one sense door, let the attention settle in there. With great care, connection, non-identification. As best we can. It's all yours, Stephen.
Abiding in your sixth sense door awareness. And for a moment, the rain has taken a rest. Otherwise, it'd be really hard to even talk. Can you hear me okay? Oh, good. The other day, I got a message and a photograph from my friend Zoya Palm. She's ethnic Burmese on the border with Thailand, the eastern part of Burma. And I met her back in 2007 during the Saffron Revolution. Saffron, meaning the saffron robes of the monks in Burma. And the Saffron Revolution is when they considered the government a Dhamma. A Dhamma means not good Dhamma. Like a or Nietzsche means not permanent. And Anatta means not self. So or a Dhamma means, in that case, the government were not following any of the true principles of leadership, caring for the people and whatnot. And so many of the monks marched and were killed. And many other activists fled to the ethnic lands, almost all of which are on the borders that completely surround Burma. And Zoya Palm was one of them, and another good friend of ours, Chit, who became an activist. And many of them had to leave, escape into Thailand. They lived in Chiang Mai. That's how I ended up in Chiang Mai, because the activists and journalists and many of the people I worked with back then, trying to get monks who were being chased by the government out of the country into America or Europe and whatnot. The picture that she sent me the other day was powerful. She was receiving a reward along with Desmond Tutu, who just passed away a few days ago, not even a week. And there was a quote under the picture of Zoya Palm and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And I'd like to read that. I know he meant a lot to her, because he lent his energy, his words, his resources, as a Nobel Peace person, to the cause that she was helping the communities there, and especially the women and children, and still does, a couple of decades later. So Desmond Tutu, who I also met when he was visiting the Dalai Lama once, who I often met with in India or America, Desmond Tutu says, "We are made for goodness. We are made for love. We are made for friendliness. We are made for togetherness. We are made for all of the beautiful things that you and I know. We are made to tell the world that there are no outsiders. All are welcome. black, white, red, yellow, rich, poor, educated, not educated, male, female, gay, straight, all, all. And he spoke with such energy and force, that little man with a tremendous tidal force. We all belong to this family, this human family, God's family. Beautiful quotation. And it certainly speaks to everyone and speaks to us who are now involved in what's going on, what's happening in Burma, and the difficulties. So I hear often from Zoya Palm, whose organization I'm a member of, so I get these notices. Someone asked me New Year's Day about what do I think is going to happen in the world. You know, we're entering this, supposedly this new year. I was just asking Jesse a while ago, what do we call our calendar? And we remember that it's the Gregorian calendar. It's quite linear, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. Another friend of mine is writing a book, autobiography book, mostly about his baseball life. And he had just received this Mayan book, which was just all the intricacy of the Mayan mind and creativity. You know, and their calendar is quite different. It's not linear. It's more like in cycles, and moves in cycles. And you read it and understand it in a very different way than the sort of logic, linear, day-to-day kind of Gregorian calendars we live by. And so I told this friend of mine, who's also a healer, we do a combination of Pilates, ballet, dance, body work, weightlifting, and standing still for an hour and moving different intricate muscles in the body with after looking at these very vivid anatomy drawings or pictures of what our body looks like, were we to strip our skin off or had the ability to look in. And it's a powerful session I had on New Year's, and kind of floating out. And she asked me, Stephen, what do you think is going to happen this year? And of course she meant, it's just been a strange, weird, bizarre, convoluted 2 years now. And in the Gregorian calendar, we had just stepped into this something called 2022. And I realized and said that actually I didn't feel like I was in a new year. I felt like I was in a liminal in-between space, and that I said, I don't know. I do not know what's going to happen. Probably the world will continue following its collective karmic results. Collective karmic meaning all who live on the planet, and the combination of everyone's intentional actions, thoughts and speech and physical actions contributing to everything that's happening, whether it's pandemic or extinction or a climate crisis, and kind of all those things that seem now very, very intertwined and interconnected, and that we're all feeling. And a lot of our physical distress, anxiety, depression, illnesses, and so forth, and even the way we are relating are all effects from that. I said, I don't think right now, I can't say like it's going to do anything different. I said, it's likely to seem worse. I said, what might be different is what we do, the choices we make inside to continue to create space and light and to affect conscious choices in a more expanded awareness, like the symphony of awareness Michele was describing in our sixth sense door awareness, which is either global, awareness abiding in all the senses, or sometimes it's tuned into a single instrument. Either way, it's the same powerful beam of awareness and the potential result of understanding, of love and wisdom. I said, that's what I think we can do. And that's what I think there may be more of, and that effect may counter what's going on in the world, but we don't know, because all we can do is be aware of our intention and be aware of the power of intentions, that willed actions have an effect. Willed, intentional thought, speech, and bodily action it's the definition of karma. That's what karma is. A volitional thought, volitional word or speech, or volitional written words, and bodily action. They can be unifying or divisive. They can harm and hinder, or they can be harmonious and bring together. They can be confusing and fogged out and so forth, or they can be crystal clear and expansive, as wide as the most vast valley, or as expansive of being in the middle of the ocean. And that's the difference we can make if we're not entangled with results. If what we do, our intention, the gathering of all our energy, all the energy we have, skillfully, so we don't overextend or burn out, but nevertheless doing with our energy rather than spacing out with it, changing that energy into an action in the context I'm talking about within. And it may have an outer effect. So we may be involved in working with the plastics in the ocean and the devastation of forests in different parts of the planet right now. And, everything contributing to the climate crisis, and being as careful as we can with the movement of these variant pandemics over which we seem to have very little control. And so our power is in doing all that we can and letting go any attachment whatsoever to the results. Results there will be. There are always results to willed, intentional, volitional thoughts, speech, and actions. And we will observe them, of course. We will see if there's change. But to do so without attachment is the purest form of awareness and liberation. And we may repeat the same volition, the same gathering together of powerful energy, and the same expression of mental, verbal, or physical actions. And its impact is purest and strongest and most potent when we're not attached to the results. We do what we do, and then we just are present in the moment. That's the definition of mindfulness. Satipatthana is that precognitive awareness of presence through, as Michele was teaching, through the body and senses, through feelings, and through our consciousness itself, all the thoughts and mental states and formations, and the momentary, ephemeral consciousness itself that arises, knows, and vanishes. And then phenomena, so body, feelings, consciousness, and the fourth of the satipatthanas is standing in the moment, knowing the sixth sense experience, as Michele was teaching, as Michele was talking about. Knowing, for example, that seeing is happening as opposed to being attached to and doing something about the object of sight. Hearing is happening, and standing, the presence of mindfulness, just abiding there, feeling, knowing, and sensing sound vibration, whether it's the whole symphony or a particular instrument, sounding its nature. And likewise, through the felt sense of the body and fragrance, taste, and the mind itself, that powerful presence and intention to be present. And the volitions that arise, and perhaps among them, a volition or intention to do something that's helpful for ourselves, for the world. And then the energy that we might have to gather, knowing when we don't have the energy, and stepping back to rest or repair or restoration. But still we are taking care of ourselves. We're still practicing. We're still being aware of what's going on in the body and feeling the aches and pains and suffering of the mind, that what we're holding mentally, the emotions and mental states, and whatever physical things are happening. We're taking action by just resting and feeling them, or taking the medicines that we need, or getting the exercise that we need. And then at the same time, not being attached to the results of our actions. That's the power. That's the potency. That's the liberation. That's the condition for which we'll have further volitions, intentions, influenced by goodness, as Desmond Tutu was talking about, the goodness that we all are, the togetherness and connectedness that we all are. Those intentions, again, will inspire the right actions, and our discernment will know if they're colored actions, colored by attachment or aversion or delusion, and readjust to the intentions inspired by clarity, by compassion, by understanding. And then we react. We do what we do. And then let go of identification. Let go of self-referencing. Let go of it being about me, I. We just do what we do. And then we may not pay attention. We may not even know whatever happens. We may do what we do and go away. And whatever effect we had, on that person or on that project, or with the conditions in the ocean or atmosphere and so forth that we're concerned about, we're likely not to know certainly the immediate effect of our intentions and actions and non-attachment. But later on, we might notice something. We'll certainly notice something in the immediacy of our intention and action, and just standing in our place, not being attached, not doing, not looking or interfering with the results of our actions. We'll certainly feel effects of that. We'll feel peaceful. We'll feel a kind of reverence. We'll feel respect for ourselves and for what we're doing, the purity of what we're doing. These teachings are critically important, and that's why we practice them. Otherwise, we can forget, and we can move from the just being and learning the power of doing nothing to being involved and to mixing things up and being confused and uncertain. And then we're kind of dealing with doubt a lot, like fog in the mind. And that's also good to explore. We don't want to just get into a coping place and cope with maybe another year of new variants and another year of new issues of icebergs breaking off of the Antarctic, and conditions in the planet that seem more dire and so forth, which will keep happening. And coping is what probably most sapiens do. Just distract or somewhat aware. But coping is like a cloud, is like a fog in the mind, and there's no understanding there. And so it's necessary to expand our awareness and our compassion and call up interest, investigation, curiosity. What is this fog? What is this consciousness or mind fog or brain fog? Why am I feeling spaced out here and not clear? So we turn the attention on the fog itself, on the spaciness itself, taking interest in how it feels. Where is it in the body? And how is it affecting other mental states? How is it affecting my energy and my capacity to have potent, effective intentions, followed by the energy required to act on the intentions and so forth. And so we study the fog until there's clarity, until we see perhaps it's just a little seed pod of doubt. A small little seed pod of doubt can just fill the skies, like it's been here for, seems like years, but a week or 10 days, just constant rain and inability to see blue sky. We work with the fog in that way and respect what's happening. Sometimes the coping is a way of defending against overwhelm. And so we want to feel at ease. We want to feel at rest. We need to observe from that place of profound relaxation and rest, not rest from weariness or tired, but real spiritual rest, ease. And then from there, we can explore anicca nature. We can see that this cloud isn't permanent, that the doubt isn't permanent, that it has the nature of even momentary change. It's strobing, it's vibrating, it's throbbing, it's perforated with space and light. And as we look at it, it's nothing. There's no core to it. And that's how it begins to dissipate and disappear and go away. And we retain our practice abilities rather than give in to a diluted kind of rest, by staying always distracted and staying always with these coping strategies. they're there. So they're there. Good. Respect them and treat them as just another object of our mindfulness, to have that standing in the presence of awareness of what's happening with the body and feelings, consciousness, and phenomena that are appearing through the senses. With a really good friend of mine, and of 30 years, and physician, we were in the same theme. The room was filled with young people, in their 20s and 30s. Many of them went to the same school, and all who are really interested in all this stuff, what's happening on the planet, what they can do about it, how they can be agents of change. And they're interested in meditation and whatnot. And my friend had done a lot of sailing, non-instrument navigation with my friend Nainoa Thompson and Bruce and Shorty Bertelman on the Big Island. Probably the only 3 elders left as these wise navigators, these non-instrument navigators on boats with no instruments. And the navigation skills are through what we just did with Michelle's guidance: attunement to the senses, attunement to the 6 senses, 5 physical senses, and the intuitive knowing of the consciousness. And so we were talking about that, and it's when it started in the mid-70s, exactly when I started Vipassana, and the meeting of Nainoa, the first navigator in many, many, many hundreds of years, to be reintroduced to the skills, because he met this Micronesian master who had learned from his grandfather from age 3 years old how to do this non-instrument navigation in this smaller space of Micronesia, kind of like in a bubble. And he came out of that bubble and taught Nainoa and my friends Bruce and Shorty how to do this navigation, how to use our senses to understand the currents of the planet, the sea currents, air currents, the currents of clouds, the currents of light, early dawn light, and evening sunset light, and the currents of and motions of bird flight and fish, and Mao's skill even of using taste and fragrance to know what water he was in, Samoan or Fijian waters. And just this attunement to the currents of life is how they were able to sail the entire Polynesian Triangle, Hawaii to first to Tahiti, and then the end of the triangle is the Maori lands of New Zealand, and finally the last journey that took the most energy, and only the elders were doing the sailing and really had to be attuned to get there. The navigator is treated like a monk, like a monastic in seclusion. He's left alone, or she. Now there are a number of women navigators all these years later. And so, they're in a little hut and they're left alone. They only get maybe 3 or 4 hours of rest a day. And they're just tuning in. They're feeling it. They're like Mao could feel through his body by sitting naked on the floor of the canoe. He could feel up to 5 currents at once using his testicles and his buttocks. The vibration of that come through the canoe and into his body. And he would know the currents and where he was in the world, on the planet, And they do the same looking at the stars at night when it was clear. They would tell them at any time exactly where they were, where they needed to go, and what adjustments. So this last, most difficult and longest journey to Rapa Nui, our Easter Island, they just hit it on the spot. It was the best sailing in 25 years. They just nailed it and got right there. It's like our practice just coming together, letting go of attachments, efforting, and so forth. And suddenly there's a moment of profound insight, opening, awakening, peace. It was like that. And then, as many of you know, it sailed around the world, across all the seas, just a few years ago, over a 4-year period. And the journey they wanted to do now, and would have been doing if it hadn't been for COVID, is to circle the largest body of water on the planet. This one here, the Pacific Ocean. Circling the Pacific Ocean is greater than circling our planet. That's a profound kind of journey. It's like when we undertake a real serious period of practice in our life, both in monastic conditions and day to day, when we really commit to these foundations of awareness, of really knowing the body from within the body, and knowing feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, from within those feelings. By doing so, there can't be attachment or aversion or delusion, because we know the difference between pleasant feeling and attachment, unpleasant feeling and aversion, and neutral feeling and delusion. We just know it because we're practicing from within that body of feelings. And likewise with consciousness, knowing that consciousness arises due to particular careful conditions. And then it goes away. And those conditions are the contact of a sense input and the receptor of eye, ear, body, sense door, etc. And the moment of that contact is the reason for that knowing consciousness to happen. It won't happen otherwise. It's a miracle. It's marvelous. And then that consciousness is gone. It's never going to come back ever again. And then the phenomena is just, as Michele instructed us, abiding here in the body and the body portals of sights and sounds and fragrances and tastes and so forth, and the knowing function. And then all phenomena present themselves as they are. And that's how understanding, that's how love arises. In our tradition too, there's a concern because all the elders are almost gone. Like in the Polynesian Voyaging Society, there's no one who's ready to step into that role of senior Po, elder navigator. There's a few men and a couple of women who have that position. But then, what's next? In our tradition, it's the same thing. It was absent for hundreds of years until this monk, this wandering sadhu, U Narada, who became the Mingun Sayadaw and Mahasi Sayadaw's teacher, asked, what is Satipatthana? How do you practice these foundations of awareness? And he found an enlightened being in a cave in the Sagaing Hills in Upper Burma, where we teach. And he explained, they're just what they are. You know the body as the body from within the body. You know feelings as feelings from within feelings. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, period. You know consciousness from within consciousness. That means awareness is within a moment of consciousness to know its fleeting nature and its function to know something for a nano moment and then fall away. And you know the sixth door phenomena and all phenomena by being within the phenomena as it's arising, as it's expressing, as it's passing, and seeing its impermanent nature. And that seeing is the cause for non-attachment, for letting go, for liberation. Who's going to follow? We don't know. So it makes it all more the imperative. It makes me more inspired to use the life I have left to practice all the time. To practice all the time. The Dhamma takes care of itself. Centuries can go by. The Dhamma is, whether or not there are Buddhas. So when the conditions are right, the Dhamma reappears. And those who can carry the Dhamma, those who can progress in the Dhamma, those who have the skill of transmitting the true and full liberating Dhamma, will do so. So kind of not to be too worried or too concerned. The navigators are still doing what they do best and teaching younger people to do it. All of us will see who comes into the position of being an awakened teacher or a skilled Po or navigator. Let's just sit for a moment and feel our feelings. May this year, whether we see it in a Gregorian linear way or a Mayan cycled way, may it bring fulfillment. May it bring peace. May it expand our compassion, our awareness, our kindness.
Steve, you might want to turn your original sound on and ring the bell again.
Oh, I thought
I
it was
know.
off.
I know. It's hard to remember to do it.
So it should be on.
Yeah. It's always off when we turn our computer on, but then
So now it's on.
yeah.
Different? That work? Well, it works for me either way, so it's great. I get to hear it.
It's such a beautiful bell. It's nice to hear it. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to David and Gloria, who gifted it, who gave the dana. All dana leads to all the paramis. The bookends of the paramis are dana on one end, equanimity on the other. So if you practice dana, you practice all the other 9, including the equanimity. That's what our practice is. There's so many ways to express our practice, beautiful ways.
Thank you. So if anybody has any questions about their practice, the talk, Richard already, huh? Right.
Sorry, I gotta change the setting here for folks. There you go, Richard. You should be able to unmute now.
Okay. Well, I want to share my confusion with everyone. When I hear Steve talking about these navigators, even though they're paying very detailed, close attention to all of their senses and how they feel in their body, they're really still grounded in situational awareness. They know where they are. It's objectively true. They're not just feeling a certain way. They're actually not getting lost when they go from Hawaii to Tahiti. And yet for a number of years, when I hear people talk about paying attention to your senses and not sort of labeling the object that you're hearing, for example, I get a very subjective notion of what to pay attention to. When you hear a seagull, don't call it a seagull, just listen to the sound. Can you correct me on all that?
It's a good question, Richard. And it's one of the paradoxes of practice, because we do both. If we want to rest in reality, then we rest, as with Michelle's instructions, with just sound vibration, just light waves and particles, just pure elemental sensation of body, just moment to moment knowing of the heart, mind, and so forth. If we want to engage with the world, we have to know about conventional reality, which we all know much more because we were trained in it, we were conditioned in it, and most of the time we think it is reality. But to know the difference is where our liberation and where our power lie, because we have to know what a car is, so we don't crash it, or we, don't go through red lights, or we can get in the car and we can work it and so forth. So we do have to know, we have to have that subjective capacity to survive, engage, if we're in the world in that way. If we're in a monastic situation, everything is taken care of for us. Everything. Food, medicine, toothpaste, clothing, if we're laymen, robes, if we're monastics and so forth. And we can live 80% or more in that non-subjective, precognitive, moment to moment reality, and then know the difference. What is real? What is actually true? And what is that way that we objectify things and put them out there as things, and see things as a label, a tree, a chair, a seagull, a car. If we know the difference, we're free.
I trust you.
Yeah, I want to add just two little things. One is the thought that this is a seagull. We don't teach people to not include that thought as a homeland, as part of one's experience. But the idea is that we're trying to help people find a homeland, as Steve is saying, in the non-conceptual reality as well as the conceptual. So it's not considered a rejection to just notice that thought. There's not a rejection of the thought, but there's a way in which one isn't taking that to be 100% reality. It's considered less than 1% reality. So it's just a shift of how we understand reality. And so it, like, in terms of like kind of amplifying what Steve's saying, I think that it's such a good question, because this is not trying to find a map of the world in the way the Polynesian navigators are finding their way mapping. It's much more, the map is cultivating the four Brahma Viharas, for example. So kindness would become a map of how to be, or loving kindness is a map, or sympathetic joy or equanimity, or the paramis are another map, or the progress of insight's another map. But I would say that the mapping is a very different kind of mapping, but it's the same. It's all mapping. So it's like a kind of, it's finding a spiritual homeland in every moment that's actually uncertain. It's uncertain. So every moment that we a moment of consciousness appears and disappears. When it disappears, um, one has to let go of everything one knew before, because it's gone. As Steve was teaching today, it's like one moment it happens, but it's gone. And in that going, one can find a homeland in uncertainty as the truth. So anicca, dukkha, anatta, for example, become the home versus conventional reality. So I'm just kind of offering a few ways to hold a very important question about what is home. What is not being, meaning what is not being lost versus what is, or confused. You don't sound that confused to me, actually.
We're getting there. We're making a little progress.
Right, I think so.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Ananya.
Navigators did get lost a lot in the beginning. When Mao was on the boat, he was never lost, but he just stopped interfering with the learning of the younger navigators, and let them correct their own, miscalculations, or their own absence of attunement to particular currents, or lack of currents, like doldrums, when nothing at all is happening and there's no way to read anything, and the sky is covered so you can't see stars or moon, which happened once to Nainoa. And he was so wanting Mao to come out of the hut and tell him what's happening, but he wouldn't. And so he got really afraid and scared, and he was in his raincoat, which kept him dry but not warm, so he was shaking, and he just got still. And he was obsessed with not seeing the moon. If he could see the moon, he knew where he was. And then he started to feel this warm sensation in his feet. And that warm sensation moved up his legs and knees and thighs and pelvis, and up his torso and into his heart, and into the pico, right below the center, right below the belly button, which is the place of knowing in the Hawaiian system, Polynesian system. And he just abided there, and the warmth removed the fear and the shaking. And then all of a sudden, knowledge came up and compassion came up. He knew where the moon was. And so he gave the instruction, and the steers person changed the direction of the boat, even though it was moving very, very slowly in the doldrums. And 10 minutes later, there was a short opening in the sky, and the moon was exactly where Nainoa saw it when he was being quiet, when he was being still. He told this story when the Hokulea crew came to my parents' house, and our daughter Michelle, my parents, and I, we were all we went out in the boat with him to distribute my father's ashes, and then, as is the custom, we were partying afterwards in the backyard of my parents' house, and talking story. And so Nainoa told all these stories of his struggles and of getting lost, and of how they dealt with it. And it just sounded so much like our practice. Patience is one of the paramis, right in the middle.
Ananya?
That was lovely, Stephen, and it shifted my thoughts to what to say. I love that image of Manoa and the warmth coming up, and to me, that's like finding your place of equanimity is what opens you to see that the map is not the territory.
Mm.
The territory is something so big,
Mm.
the map can't contain it. But thank goodness we have some good maps to point the way.
Beautiful spoken, beautiful said.
Thank you.
Catalina.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh,
Thank you. I have a question regarding delusion. The other day we were doing an exercise with another teacher about thoughts that came into ourselves, and define it if we're feelings or thoughts of hate, greed, or delusion. And for me, was very clear, very, very clear, the hate of like disliking it, or the clear of I want more or pleasant. But the delusion, I couldn't understand it. I couldn't place a thought as this is a delusion. So if you can talk about more about that, I will appreciate.
you just did. You just expressed how delusion is. It. I don't know. I can't place. I can't find. That's delusion. That's how it works.
So when I cannot place it at all, like this is not hate, this is not pleasant, this is like, I don't know, is when it's a delusion.
Delusion
Sometime.
is the most insidious of the hindrances because it can completely derail or paralyze the practice, so that it prevents us from seeing clearly, from seeing the as it is, yata bhuta, the as it is nature of things, the suchness of things. That's its job. Its job is to delude. So when I had a huge delusion bubble in practice as a monk at the Mahasi Center, and I was just crying and weeping and freaking out and wanting to get out of there and so forth. And so at one interview, when U Pandita really understood all the permutations of what I was going through, because it's hard to express, just like you felt, it was hard to express the delusion, which is an expression of delusion. So U Pandita could see that, and he said, it's like a skein of yarn. And so the approach, the practice is to just pick up one string at a time. So you could pick up the aversion and dislike. And then you could pick up the greed and the wanting and the liking, all different strands. You can pick up disappointment. You can pick up frustration. You can pick up anxiety. You can pick up depression and disappointment, one at a time. And it's just every day I would find more strands to pick up, more strands to pick up, until the skein got smaller and smaller and smaller. And then for a moment, there it was. Because the power of the present moment, was so strong from seeing all these other qualities that delusion collects, all the other kind of unskillful states and so forth. And so at the end, there was just this little seed, little cloud of delusion, whose purpose is to confuse, to bewilder. So when you first asked your question, you were expressing that confusion and that bewilderment. And that's it. That is doubt. Congratulations.
Yeah, I think sometimes if you going with Steve with how you ask the question, it's like you could see the pleasant and the wanting it. You could see the unpleasant and the dislike, right? So the question, I think the practice question we would ask you to keep exploring is often it's around neutral that delusion will appear, and it's because we're not noticing it, and so for example, another kind of thought will be I don't care. So if you look at when we care, there's a connection, right? But when we feel like we don't care, there's a disconnect, and it's like rather than trying to explain all this, I think it's easier to ask you to keep looking at like when do we shift from care to not care, or when do we shift from being able to explore neutral to getting confused, right? Like there's a way in which there's a reason why the confusion comes up, or the naivete is a kind of delusion, or there's different ways like that not being totally there, not being tuned in, and often pleasant, unpleasant, like are much more, they hold our attention, and disliking and liking, aversion, attachment, they're clearer, right? But neutral is much more difficult for us. But this is the source often of the delusion, is that we're not able to pay attention to it, and we fog in. Do you see? We fog in. There's other reasons why we fog in, but with neutral, try it. Try maybe 5 minutes a day with your meditation practice. Go through your body and look for neutral, and just see how you space out. Well, just like don't even try to do it with the mind, but you can do it with the mind. Go in your kitchen and try to find all the things you don't notice. It's all the things, or go in the bathroom and look at all the things you don't notice, or your body, or friend. It's like delusion is all around what we're not paying attention to, and what's underneath it. Why aren't we not paying attention, and then why are we getting so foggy or confused? So it's a really important question.
It's like greed and hatred have an electric current and intensity. And that neutrality is like when you turn off the lights and there's no current for that moment. Upanitha used to suggest the practice of like, while walking around, just see if you notice objects that you don't usually pay attention to. You know, a faded leaf or a small little rock that's not colored or not interesting, it doesn't draw your attention. Just the things of visual, the visual palette or the soundscape that don't call your attention. So you rest and without attachment, without agenda, you just let these things come into your awareness. Oh, yeah, that's neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Then you have neutral. And neutral can be connected to delusion and bewilderment and confusion, or with mindfulness, neutral is connected with equanimity, with peace. Isn't that exciting? Don't be attached though.
Yeah. So the neutral can go to indifference, not caring, right?
Mhm.
Or it can go toward equanimity, which is neither aversive or attached, right? So it's really, yeah, it's really exciting.
It's exciting without attachment.
Yeah, thank you. I will try that. Thank you.
Jennifer, we don't see you, but we see your hand up. So, oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi, Tina. And
I have a question about intentions, especially around the new year. You know, I've done some reflecting and setting some intentions, and I know a tendency in myself is to try and do way too many things. And this is so there's kind of an intention of letting go and creating more spaciousness, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel, I feel there's a lot of wholesomeness in many of these intentions. And there's also this like tendency to treat my life like a home improvement project, like to-do list, like striving, get better, future oriented, leaning out of the moment into some imagined future self. So I just wonder if you have any thoughts around, how to hold this moment when many of us are thinking about what we want to bring into being in the new year around intentions.
well, you're aware of what you just described, right? That sort of rush and grabbing to get, to have, to be, to do, to change. The way
Yes,
you talked about it, it felt like you had an awareness of it.
I do have an awareness of it for sure.
Yeah. And as part of your question, how to get things done without that drive, without that intensity, without that craving.
I don't know exactly what the question is because I just feel the tension. Like I feel the striving and
Right.
I feel the desire for slowing down and spaciousness.
Mhm.
And I also see that kind of my practices and my disciplines, many of them are very wholesome.
Yes.
And that they are cultivated because there's been a little bit of this drive and striving. Yeah. So I don't know what the question is exactly. I just am noticing
Well,
noticing.
you're answering your question. Those are the things to be aware of. The drive, the striving. What do they feel like? How do they affect you? Where are they in the body? How does it affect other mind states and consciousness? Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel centered? Do you feel the rest? You feel at ease? Just look at them when they arise. Oh, here's drive. Okay, I'm going to be interested and aware and feel this driving mind state. Go to the body. The body never lies. Go to the intelligence of the body. Well, what is this? Without wanting to get rid of it. Just what is it? Because other kinds of drive are wholesome, skillful energy. But the kind that you're describing actually steals energy. Brilliant
Yeah.
question, brilliant answer, and you did both.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I also I want to just add that maybe for just everybody that intention is good, the wholesomeness is good, and that to value that in all of us, and then to see that if we try to do too many things, I mean, that's just one thing to look at. And I'm not saying you are, but I often try to add in too many things and I can't do them all. And then often, I mean, I'm 70, so I've been through more New Year's, than you have yet. But it's like I do know myself enough to know if I try to add in too many things, I tend to not do any of them. So I have it whittled down to like a couple right now. That a few, maybe there's three, but I know probably two of them will be intermittent. I'm sure that it's not going to stick, but that I do have a sense of my strength. It's kind of the parami of resolution or determination is this parami where we have a determination. It's considered wholesome, and it's really a matter of when you do determinations in your meditation practice, how I was taught them and how we were all taught them was to do them when you have a chance of them succeeding. Isn't that interesting? So I think it's just like I know the few things that I want to try, and I know the ones that are going to be hard, that are going to be probably not an everyday occurrence, but a recommitment to, and the one that I'll probably be able to manage. But that's like me, and we're all different. So I could just add that in, but also I just want to say also that I think I might have been one of the most striving people I've ever met in terms of the practice. Like, unbelievable striver. Just you might not see it from the outside, but from the inside I was a kamikaze pilot. I really was willing to die meditating. And so I don't regret that. I don't regret that I certainly had to keep looking at it and looking at it and looking at it as it became clearer it wasn't a healthy motivating force, that there were other aspects of motivation that I developed that balanced it. But I still would tell you that I don't regret it. Is that helpful? Because it actually got me doing the practice, even though it wasn't what I shifted to over time. And still, I'm not sure I could say it's gone at all, but it's much more tempered, and there's a lot more other motivating factors. So I wouldn't want you to have a taste in your mouth that striving is all bad. I think it's something that we often use to get ourselves motivated, and then we start to be able to pause and take time and find these underlying motivations that are healthier. That's
Great.
yeah.
Thank you both. Yeah.
Good answer.
Yeah.
I just want to add something from that my dad, for the last maybe like 10 years of his life or so, he decided on the same New Year's resolution every year that I have taken to heart, which is to watch more movies. I feel like there's a wisdom in that, of something that you actually want to do and might enjoy doing, that might be like close to what Michele is saying.
That's great.
I just added it to one of my resolutions.
That's great. Yeah, it's a good motivation.
Any other practice questions or resolutions or delusions?
It is a good time to begin again, New Year's, as we do every moment. It's a It's like a rite of passage we all go through together. It's powerful. It's wonderful to share it with you. We have to remember it's 2022. That's a resolution. Have a good week of practice. See you next week.